Well, once you have a minute to kind of process it all, first I have to apologize. It is pajama day today at our school, and the kids are having parades down the hall, so it is noisy in here. I'm sorry.
If we don't hear kids having fun at your school, it wouldn't be a proper principal interview.
Yeah, I know
No
they're
need to
so loud.
apologize.
So anyhow, I think it just kind of it puts things in perspective. I've done a lot of these, leadership type assessments over the years, and there's always one or two that always come in the same all the time. Um, but Clarify was a new one for me, but that's never come up. But I will say that now that I've learned a little bit more about it, it's like, well, I do ask a ton of questions,
Right.
And we do that together on our team. Like, okay, and what about this? And what about this? Did you think about this? And then, I'm constantly firing away with questions all the time and never even correlated that with a clarifying sense of why I do those things. I just do them. And I think a lot of that came from being a mom. I have 3 sons and a daughter. And so I just remember when they were, interrogate them when things were going not so good. I'm like, and what about this and this? And, I just totally bantered with questions. I hope I listened more than I asked questions, but it just goes together. It's like, it makes complete sense actually now.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I remember and just so that, and those people who are familiar with the YOS know that there's 9 Ys.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? Becky's number 4 is Better Way. So she's not far from where, her right outside of her top 3 sits Better Way. And in her top 6 is Challenge. So, and Trust is in there too. So in your top 6, you have Better Way, Trust, and Challenge. And that's what I call the secondary Ys, the ones that you can easily go into. They're not energy giving as much as clarifying, making sense, and contributing, but finding better ways is definitely a driver for you. There, you've always probably asked the question: is there's got to be a better way to do this?
Yeah, not always just a better way, but a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be like everybody else. We don't want to be like everybody else. How are we going to do this differently?
Yeah. So I brought it up. I'd love to hear about, because that is so, thankfully for us and thankfully for St. Mary's and thankfully for the Catholic school community, you have not decided to take your tremendous qualifications and go to a public sector where you can probably double your salary. What makes you committed to stay where you are and make the difference that you're making for the kids in your school? What is it that drives you to stay there, to contribute and make a difference for a community that desperately needs someone as qualified as you?
Well, there's a great need. There's a great need here at St. Mary's. We are, anywhere from on any given year between a 30 to 40% free and reduced lunch school. So the financial need is very prevalent. A lot of our students are on financial aid. That's huge to me, is to be able to provide a Catholic education for a family that may not normally be able to afford it. And yet they want something better for their children. They don't want their children in a government public school. They want their children in a private, faith-based school where Jesus Christ is the center of the classroom. And that's huge to me. That works. My kids got to go to school that way. I got to go to school that way. My brothers did too. It's just important, and it works. That's why we do it. So there's just always so much work to be done in education, right? That's probably a whole nother podcast, but we don't need to get into all of those details, but there's so much work to be done in our public schools, and there's work to be done in our private schools too. And that's the beauty of this profession, is that you can do something one year and change it up and make it better the next year. And I think that's something that we've really tried hard to do here at St. Mary's, is be on that continuous path of improvement, continuous growing, continuous learning. And I believe we've done that. Our enrollment is continuously growing. Sometimes it doesn't grow as fast as I'd like it, because there's that impatient piece of me again, right? Why can't we do this faster? But for the most part, we've been on that steady trajectory. And slow and steady wins the race. That's how it goes, I guess. But I'm pretty pleased with the direction our school's going, and The families that come to our school, they're clearly partners with us in their children's education. And that's when it works, is when you have that partnership between student, parent, and school. And that's when you get the best results.
Now I thank you for that answer. You have a tremendous opportunity due to some challenges that you've had recently. You've lost some students, but that means you have capacity. And it's interesting. When you're faced with a challenge like losing a large percentage of your middle school students, you have a choice, and you've made the choice that said, "Hey, we've got capacity. Let's add." What's the mindset that had to, because initially that had to be a shock, right? So just for everybody that's listening that may not be in the know, there was a school in town that opened up, a high school in town that opened up a middle school. So a lot of students that would have been at your school decided, hey, we're going to go there because that's where we're going to high school anyway. And so you lost some students. And rather than take that as a, oh, darn, shucky me, and feel sorry, you took that as an opportunity for growth, and you're continuing to grow your enrollment. How do you shift that mindset? I know initially it must have been a shock, but how do you flip the switch and say, okay, let's put a plan together and let's grow?
So our school is pre-K through 8th grade. And when you're running a school and you're trying to boost enrollment, you don't boost enrollment in the middle of your school, like in 6th grade or 4th grade or 3rd grade. You build the school from the bottom up. So that's where our big heavy numbers are in our early childhood grades and elementary grades. And our middle school is small, but in our middle school, we have an enrichment program, we have electives, we have teachers that are incredibly committed. And we know, and we sell this way, when you come to St. Mary's and you're wanting to come in middle school, which some people do, you're going to get a lot of attention. You're not going to be in a class of 28, 30 kids. You're going to be in a smaller class. You're going to be challenged. We're going to push you. Not working, not doing the work, not turning in assignments, not an option here. But we also know that St. Mary's is not for everybody, and that's okay. That is totally okay, because we're fine with what the direction our school's going and what we've implemented. So I think one of the things you were leading to, Dan, was we started a dual language program in 2020 here at St. Mary's. Currently, we are the only Catholic dual language school in the state of New Mexico. We shouldn't be, but we are. And that came because when I first started here and I looked up the demographics of our school, at that time, we were an 87% Latino school. And once I got in here and I started meeting the kids and meeting the families, it became very apparent that about 80% of that 87% did not speak the language. And I'm part of that. So what are we going to do to fix that? That was an opportunity to do something different than anybody else has ever done here in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. There's lots of dual language schools around New Mexico, but our school is a little bit different because our dual language program, for whatever reason, I didn't know it was going to go this route, but it attracted mostly English-speaking students. They might have a mom or a dad or a grandparent, somebody in the family that speaks Spanish, but Spanish is not typically the first language spoken in that home. It's mostly English. And so these are families, both with and without Spanish surnames, that wanted biliteracy for their children. So as it stands right now, over a third of our enrollment is in our dual language program. So when you come to St. Mary's, you have your choice of going into a dual language program or going into the English program, which we've been known for many, many, many years. We modeled our program after Boston College's two-way immersion network that is specifically designed for Catholic schools. So we receive our professional development, we receive our coaching through them, and then we meet once a year to network with the other twin schools, we call them, around the nation. There's about 30 of us around the nation. And so it's been an incredible journey to be able to implement a program like that in this school. And I will say, a lot of times in education we say, well, you teach with the end in mind. I can clearly tell you I did not have an end in mind at all when we started this program. I just knew there was a need. And
Mhm.
so we ran with it. I had a teacher that was a very good friend of mine that was a dual language teacher, and she came on board and helped me do this program. And I was a little, I will be real honest, I was a little nervous about doing this program because I'm not bilingual. And so, how are you going to run a bilingual school when you're the principal and you can't speak the language? Well, it's just like anything else. When you're not good at something, you find people that are. And so, I am surrounded by literate educators and team members, and they translate for me when I need it. They help me if I need extra extra verbiage to help with a tour. If the family that's touring isn't quite understanding what I'm saying because they're not proficient in English, or that maybe they are, it's different with everybody that comes in. So that program has been incredibly rewarding to have here at St. Mary's. We started in pre-K. It's a 90-10 model, which means 90% of the day is in Spanish, 10% is in English. And we do pre-K and kinder as a 90-10 model. And then when they go to first grade, it's an 80-20 model. And so we gradually incorporate the English. They probably get a little bit more English than some, just because they come from English speaking. And when they go to their enriching classes, those are all in English as well. The biggest adjustment for families who put their children in a dual language program is to understand that the reading and the writing don't come as quickly as they do for children in a monolingual program, such as English. So, but what the data shows us, and we're getting there because our program is such a young program, and we have our program now up to third grade. Next year, we'll add fourth grade, so we're just adding a grade every year. And what the data tells us is that by the time these kids get to fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, they are outperforming their monolingual counterparts in both English and Spanish, in reading and writing, and now science. So when we started this program, we were just going to do it up to fifth grade because the data says 5 years of a dual language program and kids are biliterate. Well, then our local high school, Catholic high school, opened up a mid-school. So our mindset has changed. We now believe and will practice this dual language program throughout our entire middle school once it gets there. Because we have to have something, you have to continue to have something that no one else has. And so as of right now, having a dual language program has been quite instrumental in our school sustaining enrollment, our school being marketable in that arena, and we're just kind of a standalone school as far as that goes. And so I would love to have another partner school to work with on this, but until that happens, we'll be the only one, and that's okay.
So you have you have partner schools that you meet with, right? You around the country, but you don't have anyone in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. So to those schools that are listening, other principals in the Archdiocese, will definitely invite them to, and I'm sure they know because I know that this is an Archdiocese of principals that do get together
Mhm.
probably at least once a quarter, so you get a chance to talk about what you're doing. I love that that is such a great differentiator for you, and you've made it a differentiator. And now you have the stats to back up the decision you made to introduce this program. And absolutely, we all know. I know. My first language was Spanish, and so learning Spanish, you learn to spell phonetically. I was an amazing speller because you there in Spanish, every letter sounds the same regardless. So if you learn to spell it in Spanish, you know how to spell it in English always. The pronunciation doesn't matter. So I always just say the word in Spanish and I'd say, oh, I know how to spell that. And so there's advantages. Obviously, you mentioned science. When you know the Spanish words, it's like learning Latin, right? Then when you learn the Spanish word for something, you learn how to see the root. And so science gets easier because you start seeing, oh, there's patterns in the words that I need to learn in order to be able to identify animals and plants and everything else, the chemicals that are out there. So what a great advantage that you're giving to your students. Becky, what's tell us about your biggest why not moment? Was that the dual language, being the only dual language Catholic school in New Mexico?
Yeah, it's like, why not? And the big thing was we had been talking about this, the dual language teacher that I mentioned to you. Her name is Jane Davalos, and we had been talking about it. And so we were getting ready to launch this in March. And what happened in March of 2020? The pandemic. And
Yeah.
so I remember sitting there and saying, what do you want to do, Jane? Should we put it on the back burner or should we just go forward with it? Oh, heck with it. Let's just do it. So we got on FaceTime Live, Facebook Live, and we launched it. And people were chiming in and asking questions and stuff. And it was like, okay, I don't know where this is going to go, but we're going to just do it. And it just, I mean, I knew there was a need,
Yeah.
but I didn't really know how to carry this out. So I needed the advice of the experts that knew this stuff far better than I did, and spoke the language as well. And so, we have our little third grade kids who are our little pioneers in dual language, and it is just beautiful to watch them and how they're integrating two languages seamlessly in their education. So I have learned so much from these kids just watching it. And then when it's time to test kids, and we test in both English and Spanish, we want to make sure there's no language loss in either one.
Right.
And sometimes, they do a little, sometimes the Spanish is a little higher, sometimes the English is, and that's very normal, but it's fascinating to look at that data and to be able to say, okay, now this makes sense, why this is happening.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, what a gift that is for your kids. So Becky, I've got one more question. I want to ask you, how did you get started in leadership? What was it that drew you to be in leadership?
Oh, Dan, I don't think I had a choice. Our parents raised my brothers and I with leadership skills. It was what they knew. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. And they just led us with, it was clearly understood, faith, family, service. That's just was instilled in us. And I'm not sure that they knew that, okay, we're going to raise our kids with that. I think that's all they knew. And so that's what they instilled in the three of us. And as a result, all three of us have leadership jobs and roles within our communities. And so it's pretty cool, I think, when kids are raised with that leadership mindset, just at the core of who they are. And that's what it was for us. It just, I didn't go to school right out of high school. I was kind of a late bloomer, went to school way late in life. But as my oldest brother always says, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And so I think we're all finishing pretty strong in our respective careers and in our leadership roles. So it definitely came from our parents. There are programs for leadership, but that's nothing compared to what you get when you're raised by leaders.
Yeah, and yeah, you went to school. So this is a great question. As an educator, so your master's is in educational leadership and administration. Was some of that stuff that you were like, well, no, duh, I know this already because I grew up learning leadership. And what was new? Were there any new twists that you learned at Creighton that maybe you or maybe a twist on something that your parents had taught you that was different or a different perspective?
Well, I think when you're learning about leadership in theory, it looks very different than what leadership actually is.
Right.
I never had to I never got to learn about what a leader should do in a pandemic. I never got to learn about what a leader should do when she's confronted by an irate parent. You don't learn those skills, but you learn those skills of confrontation. You learn those skills of de-escalation. You learn those skills of, project management and those types of things from your upbringing. That's how I learned a lot of those skills. Definitely not a perfectionist in any of those skills, but definitely was exposed to them. And so it was familiar to me because we grew up learning those things.
Yeah. Well, Becky, this has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on leadership. I know, listen, whether you're an educator, whether you're an executive leader, whether you're a CEO or a founder, I know there's some great nuggets on leadership, on how to lead different from our interview with Becky today. So I hope you guys are taking notes. Make sure you tune in. As always, we always ask you to like, like, share, and comment on the podcast, whether you're listening on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on any of your podcast platforms. Let your friends know about the Lead Different podcast. Let them know about Becky Maestra Sanchez, the principal at St. Mary's School in Albuquerque, the only dual language Catholic school in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, who's doing some amazing things and leading difference. So, Becky, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
Thank you so much, Becky. It has been a pleasure to have you on. We will let you get back. It sounds like you've got a great party going on at the school. So we're going to let you get back to being that fun principal that I think we're having pajama day. And I can verify, you guys can't see it, but she had to go and rearrange some stuff in her office. She is in her pajamas today. So she is that principal that joins in the party. So thank you so much for being on, Becky. We look forward to talking to you soon. And I can't wait to work with your team at St. Mary's School.
Likewise. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Becky.